Welcome to reality. You're now on the Code of Mind channel. We have been watching this topic for years now, and over the past few years, we've been seeing things that are hard to call a simple coincidence. The longer we observe what is happening, the less it looks like randomness, and the more it resembles a sequence of events arranged in a specific order. Let's look at the big picture together without rushing. Artificial intelligence has stepped out of the lab and into everyone's pocket. Today, people talk to it more than they do to their neighbors, trusting it with decisions that just a decade ago were considered exclusively human. State after state is introducing digital IDs. What used to feel like a plot from a dystopian novel is now discussed at the parliamentary level as a routine administrative reform. Digital currencies are ceasing to be a niche topic for enthusiasts and are becoming tools for central banks. Right before our eyes, money is losing its physical form and turning into lines of code. The boundaries of influence on the world map are shifting faster than at any time in living memory. Alliances break apart and reform in a matter of months. People are no longer talking about a new world order in whispers. They are talking about it openly, from high podiums, in live broadcasts. It has stopped being a marginal topic, and right into this exact point, where everything is set into motion at once, where technology, economics, and the structure of power are changing simultaneously, the planet's largest scientific experiment suddenly falls silent for several years. Coincidence? Maybe. But let's ask ourselves, how often in history have the most significant shifts in the world's structure happened right when the most powerful tool for studying the fundamental nature of reality suddenly stopped? History is not rich with such examples precisely because no such tool existed before. We are dealing with the first case in human history where a pause in studying the foundations of the universe coincided with the simultaneous rebuilding of the technological, financial, and political architecture of the planet. The official version is scheduled maintenance, magnet replacements, upgrading the cooling system. Perhaps that's true. Or perhaps it's not about the equipment at all, but about the fact that at the frontier of knowledge, they found something the world wasn't ready for, and they called the pause technical, because it is the safest and most convenient explanation possible, one that makes sense, remains safe, and avoids raising awkward questions. The history of science remembers pauses like this, moments when the boldest discoveries remained behind closed laboratory doors for years before becoming available to the wide public. And we are talking about the Large Hadron Collider here. What if the shutdown isn't a pause in research, but a pause after the research went where it was never originally supposed to go? We aren't asserting anything. We are observing. A coincidence is something that either unfolds over time or remains a coincidence forever. And only time can put everything in its place. While the collider stays silent, we have time to ask ourselves, what is happening to us right now, in this pause, when the world around us is speeding up and familiar explanations stop satisfying us? Lately, we've been hearing the exact same stories from completely different people who have never crossed paths, live in different countries, speak different languages, and yet describe remarkably similar experiences. Time seems to be compressing. Days fly by without the usual sense of duration. It's as if someone secretly fast-forwarded the tape. Coincidences pile up one after another. It's as if something is deliberately pushing a person into the same numbers, names, and situations, repeating with a persistence that is hard to write off as mere chance. People describe moments they call glitches, short perceptual errors, déjà vu sharper than usual, as if the frame of reality jerked for a second and immediately snapped back into place, leaving behind only a vague sense that something wasn't quite right. A separate wave of reports involves desires. You think of a person and they text you a minute later. You want an item and you stumble across it the very next day, as if the world itself adjusted to the thought before it even had time to form into words. The distance between a thought and its manifestation seems to have shrunk for thousands of people simultaneously. And they noticed this not because someone convinced them or prepared them, but because they felt it themselves, before reading about it in someone else's post or seeing a similar story in the comments section. Does this coincide in time with the shutdown of the collider? It does. Is it random? Let's ask ourselves honestly without a pre-prepared answer. We aren't going to prove anything with numbers. It's more important to check this against our own personal experience because numbers are easy to dispute, but a personal experience cannot be argued away. Have you noticed anything similar lately? Acceleration, coincidences, the feeling that reality has become more responsive? If so, you aren't alone. And it's not just the social media algorithms showing these stories more often to those who have already started looking for them. It's that anyone who exists in the state of an observer feels the shift long before finding an official explanation for it, long before science or journalism finds the right words for it. It's not that the organization is hiding something out of malice. CERN is one of the most open scientific centers in the world, where you can go on a tour, whose data is published in open access, and whose employees give interviews and speak at conferences. It's about the subject matter the organization deals with, and it's the subject itself, not the behavior of the people inside it, that generates so many questions around it. CERN studies the origin of matter, what everything around us literally consists of, including ourselves, the nature of space and time, categories that humanity considered absolute and immutable for centuries until 20th century physics showed how conditional they really are. Dark matter, the substance that, according to physicists' calculations, makes up most of the mass of the universe, but has never been caught directly, only seen through its gravitational trail on the movement of galaxies, like the shadow of something no one has ever seen face to face. The first moments of the universe's existence, reproduced for a fraction of a second in underground laboratory conditions, the moment of the birth of everything, compressed to the size of a particle accelerator. When the organization operates literally at the border where the explainable ends and the realm begins, where even scientists themselves operate not with final answers, but with models and hypotheses requiring constant testing. Attention to it is inevitable. It stems not from distrust but from the sheer scale of the questions it sets for itself. The question is what happens where science itself is not yet ready to look all the way. Who will be the first to know what was found there? And how much time passes between the discovery and its explanation to the rest of us? That is why every pause in the machine's operation is read by the world not as a technical detail, but as a sign demanding attention. Because the subject of research isn't particles in themselves or abstract numbers in reports, but the very fabric of reality in which we live every single day, breathe, think, and make decisions without even realizing that this entire fabric relies on processes that no one fully understands. Quantum mechanics allows for the many worlds interpretation. With every event at the quantum level, the universe doesn't choose a single outcome, it splits. And in every branch its own version unfolds. Parallel, simultaneous right now. This isn't fantasy. It's one of the recognized interpretations seriously discussed in physics journals and at scientific conferences. What if human consciousness is not an outside observer of this process, but a part of it? What if, at certain moments and under certain conditions, perception is capable of catching not just one strictly fixed branch, but of sliding between close variations without consciously realizing it directly, feeling only the consequences in the form of inexplicable coincidences? The feeling of accelerated time, memory lapses and shifts that thousands of people around the world talk about independently of one another, in different cultures and different languages. Let's ask ourselves differently. Should an organization working at the cutting edge of knowledge announce every single discovery immediately, before it can be explained to society without panic, without distortions, without the risk of being misunderstood? History knows cases where years and sometimes decades passed between a discovery and its public recognition, because preparing the world for a new truth turns out to be harder than finding the truth itself. What if the pause isn't silence about the absence of findings, but the time needed for what was found to settle into words understandable, not just to physicists, but to all of us? We all know about the Mandela Effect, the mass sensation among people around the world that certain facts of the past differ from what they distinctly remember. A brand name, a movie quote, a detail of a coat of arms, the color of packaging you remember completely differently. Everyone has their own story. And what is especially strange is that these stories often match in detail among completely strangers. As if memory is failing not just one person but an entire group at once, simultaneously and identically. Does the rise in such reports coincide with periods of the collider's active work? According to the observations of thousands of people, it does. And every year such observations are becoming more numerous, not fewer. Whether this is a coincidence or not is for each of us to decide. But let's ask ourselves, how many times in life has each of us noticed remembering an event differently than it is now described around us, and written it off as our own memory error, never even stopping to think that millions of people might be experiencing that exact same feeling at the same time? And now, the most discussed topic of recent weeks, the one that never leaves news feeds around the world. Why is it that precisely after the collider was shut down, there was such a sharp surge in the number of people sharing, that their desires began to manifest faster, and their thoughts materialized with frightening precision? One story of a coincidence is an accident. 1,000 similar stories from people who didn't know each other, never read the same blogs, and live on different continents. That is already a pattern that is hard to attribute solely to social media algorithms and content virality. Let's pay attention, because attention, rather than blind faith or blind denial, is what separates an observer from someone who simply floats with the current of someone else's explanations without even trying to cross-check them against their own experience. Officially, the goal of the upgrade is simple and clear. After the overhaul, the installation will be able to process significantly more data in the same amount of time, work with greater precision, and catch processes that used to slip past the detectors. This should bring scientists closer to a deeper understanding of the Higgs boson, the particle that gives mass to everything else in the universe, to the search for traces of dark matter, which remains the largest unresolved mystery of modern physics, and to solving one of the main mysteries of the cosmos. Why antimatter, which by all calculations should have appeared at the birth of the universe in equal amounts with normal matter, practically vanished from the observable world. A separate goal is to record rarest processes occurring so infrequently that the previous power of the machine was simply insufficient to catch them over the entire time of observations. That's the official part. But we will likely never know the whole truth. We have something no generation before us had, the time to look not only outward, toward laboratories and scientific papers, but inward, to where our own feelings and premonitions are born. Because whatever is happening in the tunnel deep beneath the soil of Switzerland, the main experiment has been going on right here the whole time. It is happening inside us, in every decision, every thought, every moment when we choose to believe a ready-made explanation or trust our own observation. We aren't just spectators of this story. We are observers, which means we are part of the process that chooses which version of reality becomes ours out of the multitude of possibilities, out of all the options that exist somewhere nearby, beyond the visible. Let's not wait for explanations from the outside to start trusting what we feel ourselves. Coincidences, accelerated time, desires coming true faster than usual. These aren't reasons for anxiety. They are an invitation to listen to ourselves more closely than ever before. Let's hear our own call. It sounds quieter than the news, quieter than any theories, quieter than the loudest headlines, but it is the only thing that never lies. And while the whole world argues about what the collider is hiding, the only question that truly matters remains simple and honest. What are we hiding from ourselves? Thank you for being with me on this channel. I wish you the best possible branch of reality. Subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Take care.